Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Where's my mouse? Here it is. Today is Wednesday, August 18th. Trying to shift my awake schedule / sleep schedule around, so I've been awake probably since like 4 or 5 in the morning, and we can actually stream and I don't feel like I'm incredibly tired. Plus, on this Wednesday, it doesn't look like there's going to be a ton of video game news out anyways, so this could be a fairly short stream, or theoretically. Of course, don't I say that every time, and I've never been right once with it, so I clearly have no idea what I'm talking about. I guess we're playing Shadowcraft or Bloodcraft today. The thing I'd really like to do, certainly, is get back to doing the follow list cleanup a little bit more. I've kind of completely dropped the ball on that, and unless I'm going to make another special series in which I just go through the entire follow list and try and put that out as content, I don't know how else to do that. What we might do, it would be kind of crazy, but is somewhere around Christmas, I could see just live streaming fall list cleanups. I could also try something different with big sales, like Black Friday sales and things like that. But yeah, and just an extremely long live stream. That might be something to consider too. For the accountability section, outside of sleeping, which I have been doing way too much of it at the wrong times, all I've been doing is playing the Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I've made massive amounts of success there. Really, in probably 15 episodes that are like 2-hour long episodes, averaging somewhere around that, I've only had maybe 2 really bad runs. Everything else, massive amount of things in Rebirth, starting with the new save file, have just unlocked. If anything, I suspect even now I already have unlocked more than I ever unlocked doing 90 deaths on the original Wrath of the Lamb Binding of Isaac game on my Steam account, which I don't think was the same save file, so I don't know. I'm confused. I must have either moved the save file over, or I have just played Isaac through 90 deaths off screen. Like, either one or the other happened. Yeah. But yeah, there's really no reason to go back and play the original Binding of Isaac without controller support. So starting over with Rebirth and coming back to it 6, 7, maybe 8, 9, 10 years later is the right way, but it really does feel like you're just getting back on the horse, or I keep saying that phrase as that's the wrong phrase. Getting back on the horse means doing cocaine. I mean getting back on the bike. It's very much like getting back on a bike. But yeah, major success. Although I am getting to the point where I'm starting to wedge myself down the path where there's fewer things that you can really unlock. I need to basically play as Magdalene 5-6 times in a row to level up the donation machine to the maximum to level up the store to the maximum. And while I'm doing that, I also need to try and get to the dark place and take on the lamb and see if we can get angel deals to get the keys to take on Mega Satan. Like, at some point I should probably take on a boss rush and see how that really works with Rebirth, if there actually is a boss rush. I've assumed there was one because I've been seeing a clock that's moving, showing how fast you're getting through levels. I've assumed that's a boss rush. Maybe in Rebirth, without the Afterbirth DLC, without Afterbirth Plus, without the Rebirth Repentance DLC, maybe there is no boss rush. I honestly think there's probably only 2 characters left that I could unlock, and they're kind of secret characters that aren't being shown. So I think they can be unlocked just in Rebirth. But yeah, there's 178 secrets in Rebirth without any of the DLC, and I've unlocked about 68 of them. So about the halfway point. And as far as the number of items, it feels like I've found about half of them. Also, once you get to the dark place, you start to get kind of a massive amount of items if you're lucky. And at that point, you can fairly quickly unlock new items, or not even really unlock items as much as collect items. There's just a lot of items that were in the original game that you're not going to get an achievement for getting those original set of basic items. You'll get an achievement for unlocking the for the special things, but there's fewer of those, certainly. So yeah, at this point, I'd probably only go a couple more weeks at most playing Isaac, unless somebody sees fit to gift me Afterbirth as DLC at minimum, because I can't imagine that I can go that far with the coverage of the game just playing Rebirth. And I don't think I can justify spending the extra money myself, unfortunately. I might end up paying full price next when Black Friday happens, but yeah, that weird Amazon Prime Day that happened really made a mess of things as far as budgets. So yeah, the only other thing I was thinking I might do is I might find some time to play Lego games in between playing Isaac. I don't really like doing that because that puts the videos out of order. The way they're labeled is chronologically, so it would be kind of a nightmare in a lot of scenarios to try and sort those out into different folders. Plus, there's enough challenges like the Solar System challenge in Rebirth that I can just play that off screen and try and win. I think I'm gonna have to play that probably for 3 or 4 hours more before I actually succeed at it.
By your will, O Lord. Though I set, I will
Let's see.
An extension of myself. A flash of metal, a silent night. I'm sick of being whipsy
yeah, and I guess I don't have anything else to talk about as far as the accountability section. There's really nothing else going on. I did have that external hard drive, and I was trying to use the software. The software gave me trouble, and so I just used the basically had to format the whole thing and then do a full disk scan. It looked like it was going to take 4 or 5 days, but because only half of the disk had been written, once it got to about the 50% point, it quickly jumped to being completely done. And Windows 10 found the error in the master file table, which is about the worst place you could have an error. Yeah, absolutely. The worst place you could have an error, and corrected it. The question certainly comes down to, will I create more errors now that it is formatted as NTFS with compression enabled when I plug it back into my router and try to start using it once again to either use SFTP or SCP to copy files over. And then there is definitely a question about whether the problem that it was having was how many files that actually corrupted, and there is a possibility that there's kind of some significant corruption going on. EU is on the chat, said, "Holy cow, today you started super early at 18:30. So 6:30 in the evening in your time zone? Yeah, I guess maybe that's right. Yep, EU, I started early trying to shift over. Compare that to Monday when I went to sleep at 12:30 and I couldn't see your stream. Yeah, that's typically how the insomnia works, is that sadly there's never any recovering of sleep or catching up on sleep. What happens is I pull what is effectively an all-nighter and stay up for 16, 18, or 24 hours to try and shift back to this. So yeah, I'm trying to be back. Generally, I am trying to stream about this time. Like that is my goal. But I fail quite often and am super infrequent and irregular with it.
Activate. Enhance. Fire.
But yeah. At least I'm fairly consistent with the pre-recorded stuff. That airs at the same time. There's weirdness with YouTube though, that if it only puts out like 2 notifications per day on a channel and is very random on what those notifications are. So if you are going to live stream on the day and you have 2 pre-recorded things, you kind of need to live stream before that to send out the notifications. And YouTube barely explains this. They pretty much don't to content creators. But yeah, it's not really a good system. YouTube comes from this perspective that you're supposed to put out like 1 video a day at most, and for some content creators that makes sense. For a lot of content creators it doesn't. They also kind of then turn around and push you towards the idea of putting out 1 video a day every day, 365 days a year, without taking any break, which is kind of ridiculous. And there are some big YouTubers that can manage to put out more than 1 video a day, but it hurts their channel significantly with the YouTube algorithm. And then people that come from other medias first, like Giant Bomb is a great example with their weekly Bombcast. Basically only have to put out one video a week, and then that helps them significantly more than people who are trying to grind every day. Speaking of Giant Bomb, the guy who was in charge of Giant Bomb before they hired the other guy who is now in charge of a overarching company above Giant Bomb that in part runs them, is moving, which does open up a question as far as maybe he's moving and leaving Giant Bomb too. There's a weird thing I would say about Giant Bomb in particular, because there's still like 3 or 4 guys that were in the backgrounds that ran the technology and ran the systems and weren't on-screen talent. So I could see if all the on-screen talent wanted to leave Giant Bomb because it's changing drastically, which it is, not even really being a video game website anymore. I could see where all the on-screen talent wants to leave, but they feel kind of obliged to not leave in such a way that loses 3 or 4 other people's jobs. And of course, it's pure speculation that the guy in charge is actually leaving. He's also very possibly just moving and for a bigger house, because he did relatively recently have a kid. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to talk about as far as that, really. So let's just start going through the video game news. Here we have Open Critic, which I was messing with the scroll bar, so I might have messed this up. Oh, well, maybe not. The long-awaited game, 12 Minutes, is out now. Reviews are out for it, and it seems to be getting about a 78 out of 100. 12 Minutes is something that was shown, like, I think nearly 4 years ago, where you're in this time loop over and over again, and you're trying to stop your wife from getting murdered, I think, and figure out what's going on. The concept is interesting, but honestly, I don't know if the concept works as a video game as much as it would have worked better as a play or a TV show or TV or a movie, like, because clearly this is such a heavily narrative idea that you're not just gonna you're going to have this positive or negative you're going to have either like the correct movement on 12 minutes, or you're going to have no progression on 12 minutes, because it's the gameplay elements are either going to reveal the next secret or they aren't. Whereas if you had made it a movie, the idea of reliving the same 12 minutes over and over again, well, basically that's just Memento, the movie Memento being recontextualized and not going backwards. EU says, when his vacation is over, I'll be able to watch these early streams on Wednesday and Monday. Okay. Like, unfortunately, I can't guarantee any stream at any time. Like, there's also always a possibility that I could get sick or miss a day or my internet could be out. There's also the possibility that something just changes drastically and I just can't stream at all. So, yeah. I wish I could guarantee more. I wish I could have a team potentially of 5 people that can guarantee content would come out as a live stream, but it doesn't happen. Yeah. EU says, what hour is it? In Central US time zone, which is what the time zone I write everything off on, it is 11:42 a.m. which, yeah. So, relatively early, but not super early by any means. But also specifically to me, time means very little. It means very little to me when you run your own schedule, when you can have that luxury, when you have insomnia, when you have blackout curtains that don't show you the outside. Like there have been plenty of times where I've woken up and looked at the clock and not known if it was 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. It just doesn't mean anything at all. And it's an interesting way to live, certainly. Not caring about time. There is, of course, when you have to deal with other people, a major obsession and need to focus on everybody being at the same time. But yeah, I always found it slightly irritating. Well, I even now find it slightly irritating when there are shops that are not open or businesses that aren't open just because 90% of the people would be asleep at that time. I wish there was more places like New York where it's a city that just kind of never sleeps. And I imagine we will potentially see more of that happen as the climate gets warmer and as there are more people. I always kind of imagined at some point we might very well have an entire first shift, second shift, and third shift society where resources would become so scarce in some futuristic time where people are like chemically kept asleep for very specific times, maybe for entire days. Yeah, and you might very well have a case where if overpopulation ever got crazy, I always had this sci-fi story in my head, basically, that you would have an apartment, and inside the apartments, living inside the apartment might be a cryogenically frozen person that you just share that apartment with, and on half the days that person is frozen asleep, and half the days the other person, you are frozen asleep, and you just share resources that way. Of course, I used to think a lot that there would be a high potential for overpopulation. It never really occurred to me that with overpopulation there might be a pandemic that could easily rebalance the scales and kill a bunch of people. That one I totally missed as a possible future. And I never really considered age issues, certainly, too. There is a very high possibility that future generations won't want to have as many kids, and the baby boomer generation will die out fairly quickly and uniformly at the same time. Anyways, I'm mostly rambling. EU says I can stay 5 minutes without looking at the clock. Which, yeah. I know there's a lot of people like that. I don't do that. Like, I did that maybe in school for when I was in elementary school, but it just like made it worse, certainly. Now, of course, I can't, in all fairness, I can't go 5 minutes myself without looking at my cell phone, usually. So, I've traded a clock for a much more interesting, distraction device. But, yeah. But, yeah. I'll be, I guess, interested in 12 minutes when it comes out and seeing regular people's reviews. Open Critic is giving it a strong rating. I would say it seems like it's getting pretty mediocre reviews. PC Gamer in specific gave it a 53 out of 100, saying a clever time loop setup devolves into frustrating repetition, whereas like Games Radar gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, whereas Metro Game Central gave it 6 out of 10. IGN gave it 8 out of 10. So, yep. That's what I would think too, is that the idea of a time loop really would just boil down to frustration, or it would feel so incredibly simplistic that it happens no matter how well you play or not. I think there is a slight comparison to be made. I don't think I played that right at all. To Binding of Isaac Rebirth. When you first play Binding of Isaac Rebirth, it doesn't really explain anything. It never really explains anything to you. So you might really think that the first boss you beat is the only boss. You might very easily play Rebirth not knowing what it is at all and think you've just won the game and then never play it again. Whereas the truth of it is you kind of have to beat one boss like 5 times, then you have to beat the next boss like 10 times, and it's and it just never tells you that. It all hides it behind secrets. Of course, if you know anything about Isaac, then you would know those secrets, or at least enough to know that you should keep playing. But in comparison, if I had played Rogue Legacy and beaten the game on the first run, somehow, just gotten incredibly lucky and beaten the entire game on the first run, I would have never tried to play Rogue Legacy again. And even after having unlocked probably half of all of the content in Rebirth, there's still a situation where I kind of don't know exactly what to do. I kind of don't know exactly how things work. I don't know 100% what content is in the Afterbirth DLC and the Afterbirth Plus DLC and the Repentance DLC. I'm seeing definitely a lot of YouTubers play Repentance, the latest DLC. So, like, I know there's some big changes there. So it's kind of hard to go back and play something that's older and has less content. Alright. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article here. The Epic Game Store self-publishing tool enters closed betas so devs can tinker. Which, okay. The Epic Game Store will, I think, change fairly drastically overnight the second it lets people self-publish. Like, right now, in a funny way, because the Epic Game Store has been the underdog and not really trying to build up its storefront that much and not really developing features or backend to support a lot of games, it is kind of a nice, polished, curated experience. It would be very easy to specifically go to the Epic Game Store and just buy everything at the Epic Game Store and have a decent number of games that aren't that wouldn't really break a major budget. I imagine you would get out less than $1,200 if you tried to buy every single game on the Epic Game Store at full price. Whereas if you try to do the same thing on Steam, you would be probably spending tens to hundred thousands of dollars, if not more. So yeah, once people start publishing, I think the store will become a nightmare, unless they can head that off at the pass. I think it will become immediately flooded with low quality games with no way to really sort any of that out. Of course, I could just be a doomsayer. I wanted to show off this independent website here called ProtonDB. I signed in on my phone with this and it told me I have 1,400 games on Steam. What Proton is the Linux compatibility layer to get a significant number of Windows only games to run on Linux. It is what the Steam Deck uses. But don't confuse Proton, which is Valve software, with ProtonDB, which is its own independent effort. But what it does tell is of what they consider their top 10 games, 30% of them natively run on Linux. So, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Dota, and Team Fortress 2. 20% of them are gold, which means they run with mostly no problems, whereas platinum means nobody's complained or filed a report at all. And this is all user-submitted database. Actually, we should just look at the rating definitions directly. Platinum runs perfectly out of the box. Gold runs perfectly after tweaks. Silver runs with minor issues but generally is playable. Bronze runs but often crashes or has issues preventing playing comfortably. And Borked is either won't start or is crucially unplayable. So, yeah, for the top 10 games, the ones that are Borked are PUBG, Apex Legends, and Rainbow Six Siege. But I would also say there has been some major improvement from what I hear over the past few months. When you start to spread it out to the top 100, then the percentage of native games goes down a little bit by about 10% to 27%. Then you have platinum at 15% of the games, gold at 51%, silver at 60%. So, and then the way this whole thing works is this color coding is bad. But so the main thing to see here is overall games that just totally don't work in the top 100 is a much fewer percentage. Same is true for the top 1,000. So, but they take it from the idea of what is gold plus plus, and it's batting about 3/4 of the games that they have reports for. See. Do this.
Did I predict wrong?
And do this.
Fabulous. The things I do for fashion.
And then do this. And then we'll just end the turn here. So, when you start to think about the Steam Deck, then the question becomes, how many kids' games are actually playable? And that's kind of a hard thing to find out, because there's no list here to really find. You can see the recently improved, and like Pinball FX3 being recently improved, and several other big ticket games, which I assume this would be the thing to keep an eye on just once a month or so, is figure out, can the AAA top games, are they getting improved? Are they better playable now?
The resplendent phoenix graces you with her presence.
Let's see.
What is this weird feeling? Is a guarded pearl.
So yeah, when you look here, as far as things that have been recently improved, they are big ticket games. And you're not seeing small indie games. And then if you look at the highest user scored ones, you have some major ones with Sinrin Bonka. I don't recognize that game. Hat in Time kind of is a kid's game, but nothing here. Nothing else. Yeah, you would have a hard time trying to figure out what games you specifically would want on the Steam Deck in particular. There's clearly a decent number of games here that people would like to see worked on. But if you were going to compare the Steam Deck to Switch, the only thing I could think is type in Lego and look at all the Lego games. And you can see like Lego Star Wars is gold. It says Lego Marvel Superheroes is platinum. What would be really crazy is if the micro stuttering issue that seems to irritate me quite a lot, if that was fixed using the Steam Deck and just guaranteed to not have a problem. It might very well be the case that that is the issue. That would be the case. But yeah, Lego Marvel Superheroes apparently has been whitelisted by Valve. Star Wars Clone Clone Wars. Silver, platinum. I don't know what the down arrow means, as if there's been more negative reviews. But generally speaking, all the LEGO games are playable. So if you were going to spend $500 on a Steam Deck and hand your Steam library full of LEGO games that you already own, that seems like that would work. The only other kind of kids games though on Steam, and this is more of a Steam issue that than anything, is that there just aren't a lot of kid-focused games in general. But when you look up like Disney games, there's a decent number of Disney games here that are platinum. Of course, Disney Infinity is not playable, I don't think, anymore, really. So yeah, I could see that working. Some of these have not been reviewed enough on the Proton DB. But that is about all I could think, is find the Disney games, find the LEGO games, and that's about it. Like Monkey Island and Star Wars games also not really kid friendly, but they also seem to play fairly well. EU said, posted, question, am I the first subscriber to actively watch your streams and comment in all of them? And he misspelled actively. It's, I think, ACTIVELY, but maybe it doesn't have the E in it. No, I think it does. It's how you type actively. Here. Spell actively. Yeah. ACTIVELY is how you spell it in English, which is close enough, certainly. To answer your question, not 100%. What has happened in the past is I've had some fairly active people pop up and chat for a while, and then their life gets busy, or they get bored, or I don't know, maybe I start repeating myself too much, and for one reason or another they just stop watching or stop commenting. At a certain point there's kind of not a lot to say. YouTube, I think in particular, kind of is built around the idea of moving fans of small YouTube content creation away from the small content creators to the big content creators. I know specifically there's a great example of this in which I have been very specifically watching a small, more maybe more aggressive, not YouTube family friendly podcast that airs on a weekly basis, and 100% consistently it tries the YouTube algorithm after I watch the podcast, instead of having me go and watch a different older version of the same podcast from the same creator and the same YouTube channel, pushes me to a completely different content creator, completely different person, completely different, probably a little bit more family friendly creator, and it's just like, no, I don't want to watch this person. The algorithm just pushes and pushes and pushes. YouTube thinks it knows what's best for you, when YouTube itself doesn't even know what's best for itself. But yeah, there has been individually at separate times at least 3 or 4 people that have gotten heavy onto the chat. There's even been a couple of times where it's been two or three people on the chat at the same time talking to each other. Which ideally that is what you would want in a chat, is you would want to let your fandom create a form of a community and interact with each other a little bit more, because very quickly, even with just 1,000 subscribers, you can have 10-20 people on the chat scrolling by, all posting comments, all trying to get the attention of the content creator, and that's when you typically see somebody say, I'm only going to read out the super chats, you've got to pay me to get my attention, which is a gross thing to do, but at a certain point in a capitalist society, I mean, it really is about the only thing you can do. If you've got to slow down the flow of information. I mean, I definitely am fairly distracted while streaming at the moment. Like when I am streaming Shadowverse and trying to talk about video game news, if there were 10 people all trying to get my attention in the chat at the same time, that would potentially become very overwhelming. And there's only so many assistants and moderators you can have that to go through the chat for you and try and bring actual questions to the forefront.
Prepare yourself.
There is definitely also troll problems, certainly, where people ask trollish things or post trollish things in the chat. Once you have a large chat, that becomes an issue, or just people trying to spam in the chat. There also definitely are cases where people just ask the same thing over and over again, different people asking the exact same question. I'm still struggling to find a Shadowcraft or a Bloodcraft victory. Alright, let's get back to the video game news. The UK retailer Game is going to have some PlayStation 5 consoles available on Thursday morning, which may be the first indication of the shortage kind of slowing down. I definitely appreciate people coming into the chat and commenting, and I definitely try my best to engage. But yeah, there's definitely a point I could see. Like, ideally, what I would like to have happen with my channel is to magically find 500 people willing to subscribe to my channel and have at least 100 of those people actually watch the videos, so the watch time gets loaded up. Excuse me while I'm pouring water into my glass. I have a big jug and then a small glass full of water because I go through water incredibly fast. But yeah, if I could get 500 people to subscribe, almost certainly at that point YouTube would go, okay, you have 1,000 subscribers, let's now look at them more thoroughly and kick out another 100. But if my channel could gain momentum so it got to 1,000 subscribers and kind of consistently was gaining enough to counter just the people that have dead accounts or are not watching, that would be where I'd like it to be. I'd like to be able to get a little bit of ad revenue, so that I could get $300, maybe $400 a month. That would be nice. Not realistic, really. In reality, I need about $3,000 a month to pay for all the bills that I'm currently not paying for because through YouTube. But yeah, if I could gain momentum and even get to that point, that's about as big as my YouTube channel. I would be happy with it just staying there and staying consistent. In fact, I would be much happier consistently getting a living wage every month than getting 1 million subscribers and getting a massive payout in 1 month and then being forgotten quickly after that. But yeah, my hope had always been that because my pre-recorded content is fairly evergreen in the sense that you can watch it years later and it's still pretty much the same, still worth watching and mostly as relevant as it ever was, that more people would want to go back and watch some of my earlier stuff. YouTube doesn't really agree with that idea, certainly, and so it doesn't really promote old stuff unless the old stuff was super popular in that first 24 to 48 hour time frame, or it's super popular with kids. So some of my best viewed videos still are like Lego Batman videos because kids, I guess, are getting recommended those videos, even though it's marked not for kids, and honestly it isn't for kids. But yeah. Speaking of YouTubers, the King of Random seems like they have decided to, whoever really runs the King of Random and whatever secret production company that owns it, seems like they've decided to mostly try and replace all the main characters. There was the female person, the female presenter all of a sudden started to look like she was pregnant and get very like chubby and fat, and she fairly quickly was replaced with a younger, skinnier looking female presenter. And the most recent King of Random seems to have also replaced the male presenter. And both the female and male presenter that are mostly known of the King of Random, as far as that YouTube channel, aren't even the original presenters. The original presenter died, but before he had died, he had already hired his replacements. And I definitely have seen that with YouTube channels, as I go on a bit of a rant here, before. There have been several really successful YouTube channels that were secretly getting produced and pushed by production companies, basically. So they had thousands of dollars behind them and entire teams behind them, even if they were pretending to not have that assistance. And then all of a sudden they just do a 180. I wouldn't be surprised if G4, which seemingly is just going to be a YouTube channel and nothing else, I wouldn't be surprised if it in the next 5 to 10 years does a 180 also and gets rid of most of its characters, most of its people, presenters, and most of its content changes. I know tested.com certainly did that, and Geek and Sundry did that, and I think Nerdist did that. Which that once again feeds to the negative flow, I would say, of YouTube content, is that it is constantly being pushed. It's constantly being pushed as promoting only the newest thing, and always wanting something newer and always wanting something changed. EU says your most viewed videos is called How to Set Up and Use Hearthstone Deck Tracker and even record with it in open broadcast software, with 89,268 views. Yeah, that is the most viewed video, which there's really no reason for anybody to watch that because all that information is old. But it did certainly get a lot of views, but it's basically a how-to video too. It doesn't really have anything to do with video games. I could make another how-to video like that and show off how I kind of do the whole web peek and show off games and do all of this now if I wanted to, but I don't, specifically because it irritates me quite a bit that is my most viewed video by far. I don't even think the second most viewed video has even 40,000 views. So yeah, from a lot of people's perspective, that makes my channel look like a one-hit wonder. From a lot of people's perspective, it says that my channel is a how-to channel. I had no intention for that video to blow up at all, and yet it did. And it really highlights how much YouTube loved, at least at the time when it came out, how-to videos, and how much the algorithm hated gaming content. And I don't think that's really changed. I think generically speaking, the algorithm hates video gaming content. If it is going to promote video gaming content, it's going to do it by promoting PewDiePie and pretty much nothing else. But yeah, I don't really have a reason to not allow people to see that video, certainly. So I don't hide it or anything, but yeah, it is irritating to say the least.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Although, in all fairness, too, I'm not sure what video I would want to be my biggest viewed video. It's also fairly irritating that the Hearthstone videos that I put the least amount of work into, because I was just live streaming the day a new expansion came out, often got way more views than the Hearthstone videos I put a lot more effort into. If I went back and looked at some of my content, there probably was a point where I hit a bit of a stride when playing Portal or Deus Ex Machina. I mean, Deus Ex Human Revolution. So there might be a point there where I did a decent amount of commentary and was fairly engaged, and so maybe one of those series would be one of the series I would want to promote. But yeah, generally I guess I would just want the newest videos to get the most views. Like I would like to people be fairly caught up. EU says in the comments of that video, there's a person complaining saying the volume was low. Laughing face. Yeah. Well, when that video was made, the volume probably was low, fairly low. Everything has changed drastically. Like, I have a completely different setup, completely different computer since that video was recorded. So yeah, people complaining about the audio being too high in Kerbal Space Program or the audio being too low in the how-to video, that really doesn't mean anything at all. There are also just a lot of people that have kind of weird setups, and so it does sound too low on their TV or their setup. I think someone might be knocking at my door. 1 second, I'm gonna go check. Nope, nobody knocking at my door. It turns out it's raining and that's just thunder outside that I thought was knocking. Yeah. Audio issues happen, but also, if you try to watch any YouTube video on a TV, supposedly YouTube is supposed to normalize that, and it tends to normalize the audio fairly quietly. If you're watching through a YouTube TV app, I don't know how many YouTube TV apps are even really supported these days. I know that my Roku TCL TV has a fairly drastically different settings that you can have as far as changing the digital signal processing on it to make it sound considerably better or worse, instead of just leaving it normal. I would like the Hearthstone how-to video to get to 100,000 views. That would be nice, just as a nice round number to brag about. But arguably, I would like for any of the series I cover to really get 100,000 views instead. Portal, for instance, like, since Portal's my favorite game, it would make a lot of sense for me to be very, very happy if people watched my Portal coverage and it got 100,000 views. Plus, those are series, so if you watched 10 or 20 episodes of a game like Portal and there was 100,000 views on that, that's 20, like 2 million views, I guess, in total. But yeah, I do listen to the audio. I do check it. It's often somebody is not happy no matter what. Like, even now while I'm playing Isaac, I am getting fairly irritated by the Binding of Isaac Rebirth soundtrack. It's not as good as the Repentance soundtrack, in my opinion. And so there are definitely some rooms that play certain songs that sound very industrial, very metallic and screechy. Maybe intentionally sounds so bad, but it's kind of irritating to listen to. And yeah, I'm leaving it as it is, but if it were my own personal preference, I would turn the game music down even more. Plus, you have this situation with YouTube that video game music tends to get content ID copyright claims like crazy. So you never really want the game music to be at a equal level to the voice and the talking. And generally, I definitely don't want that, because I want people to come to my YouTube videos to hear me give commentary and experience the content and the criticism that I'm creating, and not just... I don't want people who are coming to my channel saying, hey, I just want a no commentary playthrough of this game, so just be quiet and play the game so I can watch it like a movie. First of all, that's not fair use in almost any case. Second of all, that puts me as the content creator as not being a very skilled individual who's providing very much at that point. So, yeah, I want the part that I'm contributing to be appreciated and sought out. I don't want the part that I'm contributing to feel burdensome. I don't want those kinds of fans if they don't like that. Yeah. But yeah, even now the game audio, in comparison, it peaks at about negative 30 decibels, where I've got the microphone peaking, according to OBS, at negative 10. So it's considerably quieter. Of course, Shadowverse's audio too is just kind of the same music over and over again, so... I don't... Yep. Ever since I found out that my ceiling fan was not at its highest speed, I cannot get it to find a happy medium between fast and slow. Fast is too cold, and slow is too hot. But yeah, also raining outside, so that drops the humidity. Anyways, let's get to the video game news. I'll never get anything done quickly if I get distracted. Here we have a game on Steam called Soulbound Steel, which looks like it's a top-down, kind of oddly angled hack and slash game. It's kind of like an isometric, tilted top-down camera angle. Yeah, I don't think there's enough polish here to put this on the fall list. $10.79, English only. Yep. One of the things if I can go on another tangent here, one of the things I've thought about definitely would be the idea of getting rid of the looking at games and looking at every single game that comes on Steam. This is something that certainly happened with Total Biscuit when Total Biscuit was alive. He was a prominent video game critic, or at least he was fairly prominent. And he had a podcast at one point, and for a long time they were talking about, I don't think even every single game that was coming out on Steam, just a significant number of games that were coming on Steam. And over the course of about a year, maybe two, they slowly just scaled that down more and more and more because their justification was that most people weren't interested. They put it at the end of their stream. Most people were clicking off. And see, that's an unfair argument in the first place, because the way watch time is reported to you on YouTube, most people obviously are going to click off at the end of a stream anyways, no matter what. Your watch time is always going to drop towards the end. It wasn't until YouTube added like chapter features and some new features much later from the point from when they stopped looking at all the games. It wasn't until many years later that the YouTube added features where people might jump into a video past the beginning, so that your watch time might spike at some point in the middle of a video or near the end of it. But when Total Biscuit in his, I think it was called the Co-Optional Podcast, which is now completely dead as far as I can tell. Yeah. When they were justifying dropping it down, they dropped it down to a few curated games, and then they eventually dropped it down to no games at all, or just the games they wanted to talk about. One thing I would say is that there isn't enough of an effort amongst video game content creators, journalists, critics, whatever. There just is not enough effort to create unique content, new, different content, something that is a unique value add that can't just be stolen or copied. You certainly see this with reviews and press releases, certainly as far as video games go. One company reports it, Kotaku reports it, and then 20 to 1,000 other low effort video game news sites just repeat it word for word, using Kotaku as the original source. And we see that even with regular news journalism, but it's way, way worse in my opinion as far as video games journalism. So even though I imagine not a ton of people really do appreciate looking at all the games coming out on Steam, I appreciate informing myself and keeping a much broader eye out as far as what games are coming out and what games come out on Steam. Because also you see that with Giant Bomb too, is that they often just make fun of Steam and propagate old stereotypical ideas that like Steam is just full of all these hentai adult games, adult visual novels. That has not been true for at least a year and a half or 2 years. Like very few hentai adult visual novels have come out on Steam. So the fact that they made that, I think Jeff Gersman made that comment 2 weeks ago on the Giant Bombcast, and I need to really quit listening to the Giant Bombcast in general, but yeah, the fact that he made that comment just 2 weeks ago shows that he is not aware of the current state of games on Steam. And that is true, I think, for most of the big video game journalists, is that they are not sticking into the mud and getting the day-to-day play-by-play bits of information by seeing what's coming out and what's available. Instead, a lot of video game journalists Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of video game journalists are kind of in their own ivy tower and not seeing what happens in reality. EU says the 10th most watched video was called The Wheels on the Bus Minecraft Style 1080p. I used to label videos as 1080p and then sometimes 1080p 60 frames per second. I just finished watching it and I don't know what you were thinking. So that video, I think specifically, was kind of an experiment in a lot of different ways, but I don't know if I can really justify it that much. In part, I was thinking, hey, is all the views on YouTube going to babies? And the fact that it's my 10th most viewed video pretty much confirms yes, it is. That is like the one video on my channel that is actually made for kids. I think I used the YouTube music library to play Wheels on the Bus music, and I was definitely heavy into Minecraft at that point. So yeah, I was trying to make something that was for like a toddler, like 6 months olds, basically, nothing older. I probably failed miserably at that. It also did not help my YouTube channel in any way. So yeah, that is probably another video that if it hadn't gotten way more views than my average videos, which that was something certainly I think I was thinking at the same time too, is that I had content that I thought was a lot better than that, and a lot of those videos were getting 1 or 2 views in total over the course of a month, if that much. So it was a short experiment, a brief experiment. I haven't seen the Wheels on the Bus Minecraft style in a long time, so I don't know how awful it is, but I do know I spent less than half a day on it. Of course, it is also like less than a few minutes long. I think that was also part of the experiment, was to see, hey, can I get my watch time up a lot by having something that would just get watched all the way through. It was obviously a learning experience, though, and I think it's always important to point this out, is that, hey, if I hadn't done the Wheels on the Bus Minecraft story, Minecraft style, then I wouldn't have learned to not do the Wheels on the Bus Minecraft style, and I potentially even now could come out with something that was way cheesier. But yeah, from what I've heard, kids go fairly crazy, particularly when that video came out. Kids would go crazy and watch just the Wheels on the Bus for like 12 hours a day if they could. Like, they just watch it over and over and over again. And when that came out, there wasn't a watch time requirement to get into the YouTube Partner Program and get ads, which I did have ads at one point. You just had to have 100 subscribers, and that was it. So I made about $100, I think, maybe close to $150 in ad revenue over the course of a year. And it really, at that point, felt like my channel was starting to be really successful. And of course, then they ripped a rug out from under everybody and said, no, you need 1,000 subscribers before we'll give you, let you run ads. Which does mean if I ever did get 1,000 subscribers, I probably would get $100 a month, probably just by default. Like, it would be fairly hard to get less than that unless, of course, the ad revenue rate has changed drastically, which might also be the case. EU says the majority of your most viewed videos are Hearthstone and Lego videos. Yeah, it is a snowball rolling down the mountain situation. Like, the only way I could fix that is hiding or deleting the Hearthstone and Lego videos. Because as long as those videos are there, they are going to be the ones that get recommended the most, and because those are the ones that are going to be recommended the most, those are the ones that are going to get the most views. The best case scenario I could imagine actually happening would be, unless I just somehow magically got really popular, the Marvel Second Dinner card game, when that comes out, I plan on playing that on day one, probably trying to live stream it the second it can be played if I can actually manage to be awake at that time. So at that point, the Marvel card game might get enough views to start taking down some of the Hearthstone videos. The Lego games are fairly evergreen, and I'm not super concerned with them not being the best videos. In a lot of ways, I would be much happier with keeping the Lego videos the most viewed instead of, say, something like Honey Pop, which I covered, showing up as my most viewed video. That Honey Pop was another experiment, certainly, that I covered that entire game, but then had to censor some of it after stupidly installing the uncensored patch. Had I just left the uncensored patch not installed, everything would have been fine. And Honey Pop came out before the guidelines went one way. Witcher 3 and Honey Pop are two series. Yeah, I really wished that The Witcher 3 as a series had gotten a lot more views, but it didn't. And I tried really hard on that one too. I tried really, really hard to get those videos out as early as I possibly could, and even at that rate, there was still way too many people who had already live streamed or put out videos of Witcher 3. And over the years after that, nobody came back and watched any more of that. Control is another example of that. Like, there have been several games, and sometimes people make this suggestion is, hey, you should play newer games. That way you get more views. You should just play whatever's trending at the moment. So right now, I imagine somebody would say I should be playing Fortnite or Among Us or maybe even Minecraft still. But yeah, I've tried that multiple times. It doesn't work. It does not work if you're a medium YouTube content creator. It doesn't work if you're a small YouTube content creator. You just become a small fish in a giant ocean, and you don't get any views. Yeah, I feel like I'm going on a bit of a rant there, but yeah, every time I've tried to make my YouTube channel more successful, it has been definitely at the detriment of the reason I started my YouTube channel in the first place, which was to play games I wanted to play and comment on games I wanted to comment on.
Is an extension of myself.
So this channel is, for the most part, 100% all about doing what I want to do. And it would be nice if it paid, but if it doesn't, whatever. Like I would rather play games I want to play instead of being trapped doing something successful. Like, if I was just trying to do something successful, I would have only played Hearthstone videos when I was playing Hearthstone. I would have stopped making pre-recorded footage a long time ago. I would have live streamed like a Twitch streamer every single day. And that's really where what it gets down to is you look at some of those desperate, like, unsuccessful Twitch streamers out there, and either they're doing hot tub streams to get people's attention, or they're just streaming for like 8 hours a day to get maybe 100 views or so. It's just way too much effort for way too little reward, and that's a shame, because I did want to see Twitch actually succeed and potentially be a competitor to YouTube, which we desperately do need a competitor to YouTube of some sort. But Twitch has failed to present itself as one. Yeah, I guess The Walking Dead Season 1 is probably a great series too. Like, it would be really nice if people had watched that. And then maybe thought about moving to the other Walking Dead Telltale games. But, like, I feel like I did a decent job on that series also. Moving on, video game news. That's why we're here. Here we have a game called Maker King, which looks like it's a Minecraft clone. Doesn't look terrible, but doesn't look particularly special. Early access, tagged as an MMO with in-app purchases. Third-party account, free to play, bunch of languages. Let's see, a new Ace Combat is in development with ILCA, according to Gamatsu. The game Goodbye Volcano High has been delayed to 2022, and a narrative reboot has been announced. Let's see, what's funny is this game was announced a long time ago, and then no new mentioned. The problem with something called using the phrase narrative reboot certainly is the idea that you've decided to make some major changes to the story that should be fairly locked in. And in all fairness, like Duke Nukem Forever, which was in development hell for probably 15 years, if I would pick a nice big round number, could have done with a narrative reboot several times over. But at a certain point, if you're just rebooting the general narrative of how a story is going to go, then you're just making a whole new game. I would warn against something like that, like Yandere Simulator seemingly has done multiple times, where it is just Yandere Simulator as a theoretical game has constantly had more and more content and elements added to the narrative. Here, let's try that. And yeah, because of that, the game has never actually been finished. Yeah. In a funny way, there are just closers, and then there are people who aren't closers, and usually video game developers are closers who can close a deal and finish a project, but there is occasionally entire teams and groups of people that can't finish a project ever. Of course, then there are also some games that, like Beyond Good and Evil 2, that very possibly were never actually projects in the first place, or PT, Silent Hills, probably never really a project in the first place. I shouldn't probably be too cruel, however, because in all fairness, there's plenty of projects that I have started and then not finished. I have a whole home lab server that I've been trying to get working in a working state for years, and never really had it consistently working. Some of that has to do with just waiting for the technology to catch up, but some of it literally just has to do with me not spending enough time on it. Of course, I don't think I don't think people want me to probably work on my backup server instead of making video game content. Moving on, here we have a game on Steam called VR Pianist, which that idea sounds interesting, but the way it's actually depicted, I think, is fairly questionable. Plus, I don't see how you'd be able to control all your fingers with a standard VR controller. Seems like you'd probably have to have some kind of special interface to read all your finger movements, and you still really wouldn't be getting the feel of playing on a keyboard. For at least a decade, we've had there have been electronic learner pianos that exist that would light up the keys telling you what to click on. This is $13.99 English only in early access. I have no idea why it would be early access. So it would it would make a lot more sense to buy a real piano so somebody could feel the keys under their fingers, and either have a proper teacher teach the people how to play piano and listen to make sure they're playing correctly, where a light-up keyboard can't really guarantee that somebody's not cheating or playing too slow, too fast, playing the wrong notes. There is also heavily a question as to how many people really need to know how to play a piano. Who is the last person to compose a great piano piece? I mean, it's an unfair thing to say, certainly, but I think it is a question to ask. Because while there are composers out there, it seems like ever increasingly people are ever increasingly people are playing other instruments more often, singing, guitars, drums, like bass guitar. Like very few pianists showing up on the rock and roll tours or the pop music tours.
Like the moon on the water's surface.
I don't think the piano would ever be a dead instrument, but it is the most bulky, most difficult to move, most expensive to maintain, and difficult to maintain instrument that is prevalent. I'm sure some of the other instruments are also fairly difficult in orchestras. And yeah, unless you can be part of a Broadway orchestra, part of a Broadway plays orchestra in New York, you basically don't have any kind of financial career at all playing an instrument in general.
A pointed sword deserves a pointed response.
Activate. Enhance.
So, and I don't know what you do about that. I think maybe you try to teach more music appreciation in school, since that in the United States in particular has been severely defunded. And maybe you try to teach more people to play instruments, but I don't know. In a lot of ways, I kind of feel like a lot of people get into bands and waste a considerable amount of their life away getting into bands. But heck, what I can't really make that complaint when a lot of people think they're going to be major celebrities playing video games online, or esports players. So it would be wrong to say crush somebody's dreams just because they're highly unlikely to succeed. I have no idea how to play this deck at all. Yeah, I wanted this to be a short stream. I'm starting to feel a little sleepy too, so I need to kind of hurry. Video Games Chronicle has an article here. A new emulator lets Xbox Series X and S play PlayStation games at 4K. So this is a Xbox port of DuckStation. Features an internal resolution scaling to native 4K. Of course, I assume you have to hack your Series X and S to get that to work. And it's, I think, important to mention that this is PlayStation 1 emulator. So, not PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3. And there's, I think, a fairly large difference between the collection of PlayStation 1 versus PlayStation 2 games. And since I never played PlayStation games in the first place, I don't think there's anything I have any real interest in that would be a PlayStation 1 game. A lot of PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games are heavily Japanese focused games. So a lot of JRPGs, lots of things like that. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle has an article here. EA admits it didn't consider players when it delisted classic titles from good old games, but the marketing exec claims the company has learned its lesson, which seems weird because then you would relist it, wouldn't you? So Ultima Underworld, Ultima Underworld 2, Syndicate Plus, and Syndicate Wars were all delisted from Good Old Games Marketplace on June 28th. All were added back to the site in early August and currently are available for free until September 3rd. Well, I guess that is probably about as good a make good as you could expect. If anything, that may have been intentional marketing on their part to shortly remove a game and then relist it. Of course, EA also in May delisted 5 Need for Speed games. So, although the licensing for Need for Speed games is probably a lot more complicated, where there's probably no licensing at all for
You have summoned the blade of
for
purgation here.
Ultimate games or Syndicate games. Starting to feel like I'm starting to stutter and stammer. Here we have a game on Steam called Gemstone Defense, which looks like it's a tower defense game of no interest. $4.99, English only. Here we have a game called New Meaning. I think we already had talked about this one. This is a free visual novel, so check it out if you're interested. Here we have a game called Joy Spring, which looks like a platforming game. Feels a little monotone and lacking in detail in the animation. And it does look like it is just one of those Celeste style platforming games where you're just platforming. Let's see, it's free, so I guess the price is right, English only. I turned on smooth scrolling and I'm potentially regretting that now, because this feels like it is smoothly scrolling too fast. So, like I have a smooth scrolling plugin that I had adjusted one way, but then I disabled the Chrome smooth scrolling, and maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Did someone call for a genius? Did someone call for a genius? Move it or lose it. Move it or lose it.
Sorry, I'm going quiet here. Let's see. Here we have a game called RoboGal, which is tagged with nudity and sexual content. Oops, I should have checked that first. Yeah. More puzzle games, although this one seems like it might have a gacha collectible mechanic to it. It's English and Chinese for $1.79. Actually, I can just show it because, yeah. It definitely doesn't look like there's anything here at all. It is kind of weird to have a Wednesday have adult games come out, but maybe that maybe games will just start coming out whenever they're ready to come out and stop being relegated to every second Friday. Here we have a game called Nikhil Murty's Civilization, which that sounds like a joke game. It looks like it's just a kind of low effort 4X game. Maybe a clone of Civilization. $13.49. Nothing there interests me. Let's come over and play. Let's see. Let's do this. And then this. And then
Scatter like the blossom.
think of this is the
Heavy impact sustained.
Oh, come here, sweet pet.
Let's see. Next, we have a game called Cave Girl Adventures. Yeah, I can tell that I'm just starting to get sleepy.
Like the moon
I
on the
kind of like this art style, particularly in the fluid motion of it. I don't know if there's a full game here, or if it's just going to be a very simplistic platformer. $17.99 seems fairly expensive. English full audio. Yeah, I don't think there's enough game here. It seems like this is the only enemy you have, and you have 30 lives apparently. Seems like a ridiculously high amount of lives. Yeah, what these screenshots are not showing me is any kind of way to defeat the plants or any change in environment. So it does seem like you are just going to constantly have to platform and then do more platforming and then do more platforming. And that does just kind of look like that's all there is to the game. Here we have one called Robo Boy Risky Adventure, which I think is from the same publisher, for $2.39, English allegedly full audio. And even in this case, this definitely looks like more of a game. Although it still does just look like a kind of simplistic precision platformer. I'm not seeing enough variety there to interest me. And same publisher again has a game called Slime Killer. So he's just flooding Steam with games at random prices. $3.59, English only. Allegedly full audio. And then here we have Operation Rescue Bunnies, which looks like it's probably a Chinese first-person shooter asset flip game. It looks fairly polished, I'll grant it that, but I don't think there really is a game here. Early access, $1.59, English and Chinese. It would be more expensive if it was actually possibly a good game. See, we don't need to talk about demos. Here we have a game called Save Iron Globe, which is a side-scroll shooter game. Looks fine, just not my style of game. I like the thumbnail here, but I would say most shooter games, side-scroll shooters, tend to have good thumbnails for generic gameplay. This is $1.39, English and Russian. Here we have a game that's all in Asian characters.
The wings of courage are
Looks to me like it is a mobile Chinese game that's been ported to Steam. They're calling it a roguelite. Early access, $5.99. Japanese full audio, Chinese otherwise. So it might very well be a Japanese game instead. You can definitely tell from like this screenshot though that it is a mobile phone game, and just ridiculous amounts of stuff all over that main screen. Here we have a game called Sphere Arena, which looks like an asset flip physics game. If this was visually polished more, I might be more interested in it. Doesn't look like a terrible idea to race balls. At a certain point you're making a game like Marble Madness in 3D, which is not a terrible thought, although Marble Madness as a game itself never really played quite right. $8.09, English only, is a little too expensive too. Maybe Marble Madness worked when you were playing with the roller trackball in the arcade, but every time it was ported to a console it didn't work. Here we have a game called Mike the Cat, which is obviously just a low effort Flappy Bird clone from the looks of it, or combination of several different Infinite Runner style games. 99 cents, English allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Rookie Bowman, which looks like another frustration platforming game. Yeah. For as much as people complain about visual novels flooding Steam, there really needs to be, if there needs to be any curation at all, which Valve argues that there doesn't need to be any, there needs to be some curation on the precision platforming category. There's way more of those that come out on a weekly basis. Ricky Bowman is 84 cents English. Here we have a game called Conquest of Elysium, which looks like a strategy game of no interest. $25.49, ridiculously expensive. English. I'm just going to start saying English if it's English and not even mentioning if it has full audio, if I can train myself to that. Because that'll save me a breath or two. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says, in Assassin's Creed Valhalla save file issues being investigated. Ubisoft has acknowledged some PS4 and PS5 players who are unable to save their progress. Of course, the problem here is that it has also been reported that this has been happening on PC and Xbox. So, yeah. I don't recall there being really any kind of bug or error with Assassin's Creed Origin, or as far as save files, at least, or playability. There were some visual glitches, definitely, when you get back to like Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Video Games Chronicle has an article here. Sea of Thieves has attracted 4.8 million players in a record month. Rare claims. It's kind of ridiculous that Rare, makers of Killer Instinct, are still wasting all their time on Sea of Thieves, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are just all on board with that idea. Also, very possible that the people that work at Microsoft-owned Rare now are not the same people who worked on something like Killer Instinct. Here we have a game on Steam called OctoQuest, which looks like a NES style clone game. Looks awful. It's free, so I guess the price is right. English. Here we have a game called Awesome Puzzle, which looks like a super easy kids puzzle game for $4.79, and once again English only. Here we have a game called Humankind, which looks like a much more visually polished turn-based strategy game. This is being published by Sega. It's rated mostly positive. It is going for $50 and $60. It says it has English full audio. I actually believe that in this case. I think you have to put this one on the pull list. There's way too many positive reviews. Now, the only reason why I'm not putting it on the wish list right now is I just need to decide whether I really would want to play this kind of game in the first place. Because there's a decent chance I just would never want to play that.
Pain and suffering are what I live for.
And it definitely would be a question as far as whether or not you'd want to play Humankind versus playing the most recent Civilization. Here we have a game called WAV OCS game, which this looks like a very low effort game. $2.69 English. Here we have a game called Greek Memories of Azure, which actually does look polished. And this is from the publisher Team 17. So I think I have to put it on the following list. $17.99. Whole bunch of languages. English full audio. Yeah. This might be something. As an action-adventure game. Looks like it's kind of a Metroidvania, Castlevania style game.
Check out my fancy footwork. Check out my fancy footwork. Get ready to fly. I wasn't good enough. Get ready to fly.
Farewell.
Man, I just cannot get a victory here. You know what? I should stop playing ranked. That's what I should stop doing. I should just go over and see if I can get victories in unranked. Like, I've dropped severely down. I was all the way up here. And trying to get Shadowcraft, Bloodcraft victories has knocked me down horribly. You know what? Why don't we play Unlimited too? While we're at it. Might as well. Let's see. Video Game Chronicle has an article here. Ubisoft Singapore is being investigated for alleged sexual harassment and discrimination. The Skull and Bones studio has changed leadership last year after misconduct allegations. Yeah. We'll see. I guess we'll have to see what the investigations have to reveal. I would assume Singapore is probably a little bit more lax than, say, the United States on those kinds of regulations. But maybe it isn't. Maybe it is actually considerably tighter. I don't know enough about Singapore to say one way or the other. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to really say there in general. Until the actual investigation happens and something comes out of it.
Designs are like unhatched dragon eggs.
Video Game Chronicles has an article. Cyberpunk's 2077's first free DLC has been revealed. It includes new jackets, a new car, and a new Johnny Silverhand alternate appearance. Which I think Johnny Silverhand alternate appearance might mean a reskin of the main character. Yeah, wasn't the main character Keanu Reeves? Now it just looks like a generic guy. That seems weird. Now, I was reading somewhere that at some point they kind of censored out all the nudity in Cyberpunk 2077. Which, if that's the case, well then, that really gives you an easy answer if you're anti-censorship. As to not play Cyberpunk 2077, but honestly, I don't think anybody needs an excuse to not play Cyberpunk 2077 at this point. And I think it is fair to say that the only time CD Projekt Red tends to talk about Cyberpunk 2077 or anything is when it is about to have a shareholder meeting and is trying to potentially assure any fears or assuade any fears that the shareholders might have. I would say Cyberpunk is kind of the example of a game that even I, as an armchair game director person who could imagine himself being in charge of developing a game, like even I would say, yeah, I don't want to touch Cyberpunk. Like that feels like a game that would be a total quagmire. That the only thing I think I could do with it is get rid of the car mechanics, severely cut it down, decide to reboot it, try to make it closer to a Telltale game, try to have a narrative adventure spin-off version of the game. Like, just try desperately to remove a lot of the video game elements, since it is the video game elements that are the problem. And at the end of the day, even if you were to try and do that, I don't think you still would have a particularly interesting story or game. Moving on, Video Game Chronicle says Watchdog Legion's Assassin's Creed crossover trailer stars a futuristic assassin named Darcy. The new playable character is coming to the game on August 24. So at this point, they are effectively just giving up the ghost that Watch Dogs was supposed to be the future version of Assassin's Creed. Generally, the idea was that going to be that Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed, and I think another game in particular, were all supposed to be in the same universe. There's like a Starfield or space game. Of course, if that is the truth, and they're going this way, then they're kind of going all in with Assassin's Creed and abandoning Watch Dogs, which, yeah, between 3 Watchdog games, that they haven't really succeeded greatly. Let's see.
This is my home. You are my food.
Guess we'll just kill that. But yeah, at the end of the day, it still would be a Watch Dogs Legion game, though. So if it has a skinned assassin in it, that doesn't really mean much. It might establish the idea that this might be a new assassin set in a modern time, and that they're trying that concept. But it's still a weird position, because there is no Assassin's Creed game that is like Assassin's Creed 1 or 2, or even Black Flag at that point. Like with Origin, they kind of rebooted everything. Storyline also, they kind of ended the world in the Assassin's Creed universe after, I think, Assassin's Creed 3, which that creates a weird story, certainly. Yeah. I think Ubisoft is kind of just desperate to get anybody to play Watch Dogs Legion at this point. You might make the same argument for Dead by Daylight. Apparently Pinhead from the Hellraiser series, or I think, yeah, Hellraiser series, not Hellblazers. That's a different comic. He's making his video game debut in Dead by Daylight. He has never been in a video game before? Guess that's true. There is weirdness though, because like Pinhead in particular is like effectively completely super powered, and there's really no way to defeat him other than maybe sending him back to hell temporarily. I mean, you can temporarily defeat him, certainly, but he's going to be very overpowered. But then I guess a lot of versions of that. I guess there was a Hellraiser game based on Wolfenstein 3D planned for the NES by Color Dreams. And instead they made Super Noah's Ark 3D on the Super NES. I don't know if you make a good video game with Pinhead and the Hellraiser characters in general. I know the original actor who played Pinhead is fairly old, and I'm not sure that his voice is specifically needed to voice Pinhead. But yeah. Again, I think you probably would want to tell almost a Telltale style story with a character like Pinhead, because all the Hellraiser stories are these narrative, like, kind of moral plays, if anything, or horror movies. I don't imagine you want actual gameplay mechanics around that. If I was going to go crazy and try and make a video game mechanic that is more than just a Telltale style choose your response type experience, maybe you do something like BioShock, where the Cenobites and Pinhead make minimal appearances in the actual game, and you're spending the vast majority of your time just fighting a splicer-like character, just low-level demons in a hell world. We saw similar things for like the game Agony, and that was fairly terrible, where you're supposedly fighting these demons, but you barely do it. Even Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, kind of same problem, is once you have these actual representations of hell, you can't depower a creature of hell and actually defeat it without it feeling fairly awkward. Like, even this animation here does not make any sense. First of all, I have never seen the puzzle cube in this quite formation, where it feels like it's a cross. And I've never seen symbols come out of nowhere and chain up a person. In most cases, Pinhead can make chains with hooks on them hook into the flesh of people, not chain them up. And even when you look at Pinhead, there's not a huge emphasis on showing his flesh pierced with hooks. So this feels like it's a little bit like degorified already. And you'd almost want to see it in a video game form even more gory. I suppose what you could do is you could make a horror game. Like we've seen plenty of horror games where you're running around like you're running around being chased by monsters. So it would be fairly easy to make something like that, where instead of a generic monster chasing you, it's a Cenobite.
Let us make out eternal vows.
But again, I don't know if that would be particularly interesting without story, or if it would just be a boring skin. You can't just make a Friday the 13th game, like where Jason Voorhees is chasing you. And you can't just make a Freddy Krueger game where people don't really care. Let's see. If we put this on the field, we can't do this.
I'll take my compensation up front.
You'll accept me, won't you?
Let's go and just evolve this.
Tasty. Let me take the lead.
Let's see. Moving on, we have a Gematsu article. Young Souls is now available for Stadia. It launches this fall for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This looks interesting. Does it have a Steam page? Yes, it does. So let's just jump over here. So it's an action RPG game, maybe with a decent amount of loot. But it seems like it has some grindiness too. It kind of feels like a Cartoon Network show from the early 2000s. Doesn't seem like it's set in a fantasy world, which is kind of interesting. Looks like it's more just a modern real world, even though you are fighting goblins. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. It's coming soon, so we don't have a price or anything. Calling it a hack and slash beat 'em up. That's what I would really like to see, is the actual gameplay mechanic. Yeah, it seems like it is mostly a small group on a small group. Yeah, it doesn't look terrible. There, we got one victory, finally. Let's see. Grisaya Phantom Trigger 6 for Switch launches in September. I believe this is a... Well, it has a Steam page too, so let's click on this. Honestly, at this point, I could just be clicking on the... clicking on the Steam pages by default first, but that would take more time up. Let's see, this is already on my wish list, apparently, because all of the bundle is on my wish list. It's Japanese full audio, it's a visual novel, anime focused, but obviously somewhat positive. Seems like 6 is already out, so looks like 7 is already out. Yeah, I think it's coming out for Switch. Yeah, that's what the story was. Man, I can't even pay attention that much. And yep, this is the problem. This is the problem always when you need this, when I try to shift my sleep schedule back to being normal. It never sticks. It eventually gets back to me wanting to stay up all night, but every time I try, I tend to get fuzzy headed and being half awake. And see, I wanted to do follow list cleanup today, and I probably won't even be done with the news because I'm taking so long and not moving fast enough. play that. A Shin Megami Tensei 5 news, Volume 2 is set for August 19th. This seems like we're going to get more teasers for Shin Megami Tensei 5, which I think we've been getting a ridiculous amount of those already. Gamatsu has the Famitsu scores for issue 1707. Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX got a 29 out of 40, which is pretty low. Destroy All Humans got 30 out of 40. That's weird too, because that game has been out in the West for a long time. Rims Racing got 31 out of 40. And a game called Song of Horror got 32 out of 40. I don't recognize the game Song of Horror. That being said, none of those reviews were high. Let's see.
How about we have some fun?
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Far Away, which is a visual novel / word game. I like the animation. Unfortunately, I think this is Japanese only. And uniquely, this does look like whoever animated this is not your standard Japanese animator. The style's a little off and the polish is a little low. This is $7.89, Chinese only. Well, by comparison, since I hold Chinese game developers to such a lower standard, which is kind of unfair, but I do just based on their average output, this looks kind of amazing for a Chinese game. Really polished. Here we have a game called Singular Live, which looks like it's some kind of VR app. See, virtual VR presentation of music. Yeah, that seems like this is another one of these examples where somebody is trying to sell a VR app when really they're just trying to sell songs. This is early access, it's free. Like, what it doesn't seem like you can do is just put in your own MP3s even, so I'm not even sure what the deal is. Yeah, it seems like it's trying to be a Second Life. It supports English and Spanish, and yet it's trying to be this virtual venue for listening to music that I think they want to present. There is almost something to the idea of being in VR and hanging out with your friends and listening to music, if that is something that people do these days. Honestly, I think music taste is so varied. There's very few groups of friends even that all want to listen to the same music. But unless you can integrate a Spotify account or something where everybody can actually listen to the same music at the same time, it becomes very weird. And I don't know why that wouldn't just be easier to make a Skype call amongst friends and just play music over that Skype broadcast. Next, we have a game on Steam called Chromatic Fantasy, which looks like a puzzle game of no interest. $8.99, English only. Here we have the Far Kingdoms Magic Mosaics, which doesn't look interesting either. $4.49. Here we have a game called Deadlock, which looks like a space shooter game, top-down shooter. By the tag, $10.79. English, allegedly full audio. And I can see the beginning of the end here, which is great. So, but yeah, it would also be kind of crazy.
Isn't demonic armor lovely?
Kind of crazy to try and do any follow-list cleanup at this point.
Scatter like the blossoms.
Try this on for size. Become part of me.
You follow
I had
behind.
no reason to play that way. I should have done it the opposite way. Here we have a game called Whack a Kyoka, which clearly is just a low effort game. $5.59, English and Chinese. I don't know what Kyoka means. Whether it's just that anime character's name or if there's more to it than that. Here we have a game called Unreal Sandbox, which looks like nothing, for $2.39. Here we have a game called War Beast, which looks like it's a StarCraft clone, but not as polished. $4.49, allegedly full audio in every language it supports, which is quite a lot. Here we have a game called Cat Jump, which just looks like a platforming game that's too zoomed out. 59 cents, English only. Here we have a game called Emergency Crew Volcano Eruption, which looks like a resource management game. $8.99, English, French, German, and Russian. Okay. Evolve this.
Flash of metal, a silent night.
And take this.
So many souls.
Should have put that on the field first.
I'm powerless for now.
Hey, how's everyone doing tonight?
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Ace Combat Skies Unknown 25th anniversary DLC JASDF skin series launches August 31st. This would be the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force skin series. Which, yeah. I guess Ace Combat probably is the fly around dogfighting simulating game you would want to play. Although maybe buying that game might lock you into buying a lot of DLC. Let's see. Roblox now owns the communications platform Gilded, according to Gamma Sutra. Chivalry 2 sells over 1 million copies in just 2 months, according to Gamma Sutra. RuneScape developer Jagex names the former Codemasters exec as its new CFO. So Rashid Barcia is now the chief financial officer. Which Dirt, I believe, was acquired by Embracer Group, but I'm not 100% sure if that's correct. Roblox Corporation's revenue is up, but it's not quite financially profitable. Outriders developer People Can Fly still hasn't seen any royalties from the game, which is to imply that the publisher either is cheating them or doing weird math to cheat them, Hollywood accounting type stuff, or the game really hasn't sold. covered its costs, which is also very believable. Yeah, publishers make a very weird scenario, certainly, where they may keep people employed or give you an upfront amount to make a game and then promise royalties if it sells, but then the game may never sell, so it's quite the gamble on both sides. Let's put that on the field. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Fortnite's new game mode curiously resembles Among Us. No surprise there. This wouldn't even be the second time that Fortnite has potentially just completely stolen the most popular gameplay modes or concepts. Remember, Fortnite originally was a survival building game, and the Battle Royale concept was stolen from PUBG and other games like it.
I shall protect you.
And if anything, I would say Fortnite is just going to be late to the party. Kind of in the opposite version of that story, Death Trash has recouped its development cost under 2 weeks in early access. I don't recognize this game, but obviously it was a much smaller scale and smaller budget game to be able to recover its costs so fast. Let's see.
Scatter like the blossom.
No misfortune will. This one's mine.
Let's see. Embracer Group has now also acquired The Imager Studios, Fractured Byte, and Smartphone Labs, which that's just more things. The Imager is a multi-platform studio. They worked on games like Crazy Taxi Gazillionaire, which must be some kind of Crazy Taxi spinoff, Sega Heroes, Puzzle and Glory, and Marvel Puzzle Quest. Fractured Byte worked on Borderlands: The Legacy Collection and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. And then Smartphone Labs worked on the Switch port of World War Z. It almost seems like what Embracer Group might be doing here, and this would be the incredibly cynical thing to say, is that they keep acquiring people hoping they can get somebody that actually knows how to program and make video games, and they keep getting companies that actually are just full of fraudulent people that they can't actually get the work done. That almost certainly is not a fair description of what's going on. If anything, the more realistic guess would be that Embracer Group as a Swedish company is trying to acquire as many businesses as possible in an effort to compete with the likes of Tencent and make Sweden as a country more influential in the field of video game creation. Moving on, we have Tetris Effect Connected, rated very positively now on Steam. This is $29.99 and it includes the launch DLC, but only if you buy it before September 1st. It's probably a game you would want to play with multiple people, and it supports VR, but doesn't require it. It's a fairly expensive game for a Tetris game, certainly. And so I don't think I could ever justify paying more than about $10 for it. but I will put it on the wish list because I don't generally consider price when putting something on the fault list or wish list anyways. But yeah, almost certainly my experience playing any Tetris game would fairly quickly devolve into just spending 4 or 5 like hours in it at most. I'm fairly frustrated here, I have to admit, to see how well my unlimited deck does as far as winning and how poorly my rotation deck does.
Keep relying on you, Dragon.
Anyways, here we have a game on Steam called Propane Labs, which is just yet another frustration precision platformer. It's $1.49, English only. Does not look visually polished at all. Here we have a game called The Dive, which looks like a low effort horror asset flip game for $1.49, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Park Rangers of the Undead, which looks to me like a low effort zombie shooter, which is kind of a shame because I kind of like the way the zombies look. They kind of look funny, and in a lot of ways zombies looking funny in a 3D first person shooter is at least way more different than your standard gray looking generic zombies that we see in most horror games.
Your head and body must part ways.
Hear me roar.
But yeah, I can't put that on the fall list. Here we have a game called World of Bombs, which just looks like a Bomberman clone. $14.34. Here we have a game called Temple of the Snake, spelled S-N-E-K, which I don't think there's a game here I really want to play, but I might give it a chance. Tile-based puzzle dungeon adventure. How do you actually play? Yeah, there might be something to this. It's early access, $8.99, English, Russian, Chinese, French. I'll put this on the fall list. I bet there really isn't anything to it, but I'll give it a chance. Here we have a game called 100 Days, which just looks like an asset flip survival game for $1.99. Here we have a game that's a prologue called Start Again Prologue, which, yeah, looks like it's a black and white style kind of RPG dungeon crawler. Let's see, $9.89, English only. Again, yeah, we're starting to run into this problem.
Hey, how's everyone doing tonight?
Where we're seeing prologue games that are not free. And I know the word prologue does not directly mean free demo, but it has for a long time meant free demo, so so it seems silly to all of a sudden see games that aren't free. I guess I'll give it a chance because of the art style and put it on the fall list. Here we have a game called Ambition: A Minute in Power, which I think we saw a game similar to this as a kind of nicely animated visual novel royalty simulator game. Let's see, $17.99 is maybe too expensive. English full audio. We'll put that on the fall list. And then Video Game Chronicles says the VR remake of Myst is coming to PC and Xbox Game Pass next week. It was previously an exclusive to Oculus Quest. It was kind of ridiculous for it to be an exclusive. There is, I guess, a question now, though. Is this remake of Myst, which is probably about the 4th or 5th remake of Myst at this point, playable without VR, or are you once again still stuck to play with VR? I'd be more than happy to play Myst one more time with better graphics. I probably should finish Myst 4 and Myst 5 first, but yeah. I'm gonna lose here in Shadowverse just because I'm not moving fast enough. Here we have a game called Neon Knights Pinball, which we don't see a lot of pinballs. EO is on the chat saying hello again. Yep. Hi. I don't know if I can really ever justify just buying 1 or 2 pinball tables individually. This is $2.99, so it's not that expensive. English only, so we'll put that on the follow list. Although, it's a decent chance. EU said he was having dinner. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see. Gamatsu says Token Rambu Musau, 2nd unit captain, has been announced for Kaisen Kanasada. I don't recognize either of these names. What game is Kaisen Kanasada? Must not be out yet. Yeah, the release date hasn't even been announced, so this is one of those examples of a Japanese game just very slowly announcing trickles of information on top of trickles of information just so that they can get as many mentions in the news and in the press as possible. Gamatsu says Opus Echo of Starsong launches September 1st for PC. Which, okay. Oh. I feel like I'm going to wake up in a couple of weeks and realize that September is already here. Which, honestly, I could use a couple more months. Can we make up a couple of months? EU says it's 9 p.m. where he is, which is okay. Yep. Here we have Mortal Shell on Steam, which has a free DLC promotion. I thought this game was already out, but apparently it just now came either out of early access or just came out. English full audio, several other languages, we can see. I don't know if people particularly enjoyed Mortal Shell as a concept. It's a lot like Dark Souls, but not quite the same developers. It's not the same developers and not quite the same game. Guess I put something like this on the follow list, but in all reality, I'd have to think long and hard if I really wanted to play something that was selling itself in part as being like a Dark Souls game, in that it is potentially very difficult. No
interruption.
There's a weird announcement, and I don't fully understand this one, from Koei Tecmo. Fatal Frame Maiden in Black is apparently going to be a free upgrade. For PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X players, which this is kind of a new release of an old game, so I don't know how it wouldn't be a free upgrade anyways, because like the only thing I could just assume is what they really mean is if you buy the PS4 version you get a free upgrade to the PS5. If you're buying Xbox One version you get an upgrade to the Series X, Series S. If you get it on Steam, of course no upgrade needed. If you get it on Switch, no upgrade available. The Fatal Frame made in a black game is a remake of an old game, with the hopes that if this somehow sells fairly well, that we might have a return to a new Fatal Frame game. Maybe. That is the hope the creators have. We are in kind of a weird holding pattern for a lot of the 90s and early 2000 era Japanese horror games and Japanese games in general, where we've yet to see any major announcements of like remasters or remakes or re-releases, or any major announcements of continuations or new games in series, short of the big ones. Like we definitely have had Senran Kagura announcements and Final Fantasy announcements and Monster Hunter announcements for sure, so those didn't go anywhere. But the B tier and the indie or whatever would be the closest thing to an indie for a Japanese developer, those kinds of games have kind of disappeared. Let's see. Moving on, Kimetsu has the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut launch trailer. If you want to check that out, you can watch the video. Here we have a game on Steam called Zool Redimensioned, which is just an old game being republished, and it might have some relevancy, so I have to put it on the fall list, but it probably doesn't. $9.99 English only. This is from Sumo Digital Academy, but being published by Secret Mode, which is weird because I think Sumo Digital in the past had feel like they in the past had published their own games.
I'll take my compensation up front.
No more corpses. Scatter like the blossoms.
Let's see.
Your avarice is my. You're in my
Hit
way.
that.
Shutting down.
Hit that. Here we have a game on Steam called Hell Architect, which I think we'd already kind of seen this. It is kind of a tiny tower type experience. Dungeon Keeper if it was flat and from a side-on perspective instead of a top-down perspective. And see, one of these games we saw, I think, had maybe just by default too much nudity in it, even though it's kind of cartoony animation. Now it seems like they've got little fig leaves in front of them, so I think that would be alright for YouTube family friendliness.
Down to the bone.
But I'm not sure. I think the demons might have genitalia. Did I just see that? Let's see. Yeah, seems like they kind of do. So I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't really matter too much and that would still fall into YouTube family friendliness, but I'm not sure. This is English full audio. It's already on my fall list. It's out now. This is the kind of game that I think if I had infinite infinite money, I would try and play this on day one, because this is probably not going to get covered by a lot of people. If it does get covered by a lot of people, it's going to be covered as a joke by people like PewDiePie, and then he'll spend like one stream on it at most and then forget about it, or it's going to be ridiculed by like Giant Bomb or somebody else, and if they even bother to talk about it at all, which I suspect they may very well not say anything at all, because they may never even know it exists. Let's see. And then here we have a game on Steam called Cosmos Quick Stop, which, I think this is probably an Among Us clone. Yeah, from the looks of it. It looks slightly visually polished, but also it's just way too busy. Way too much stuff happening here. This might actually be more of a resource management game, where you're just trying to keep this gas station in space going forward. This is $17.99, which is too expensive. English only. Yeah, you can see he's just running around doing all kinds of tasks as fast as possible. Which, yeah, I guess that eliminates the idea of it being exactly like Among Us, and feels more just kind of like a resource management game.
Good luck.
Alright. Can we evolve anything?
Flash of metal, a silent night.
Yes, this should win the game for me.
Sure, you can have this one.
Gamatsu says Pokemon Unite for iOS and Android launches September 22nd. Unite is the kind of MOBA clone. A Dota clone, not MOBA clone.
My blade
but
has
yeah.
paid your passage into the afterlife.
Let's see. Video Game Chronicles says that Yakuza's Kazuma Kiryu is going to be a playable character in Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. The Oculus co-founder's new studio Mountaintop has netted $30 million to create its debut project, according to Gamasutra. Seriously, I need one more victory. Let's see, I'm not going to show this because this is a Nintendo Switch Pokemon release, but Nintendo has put out Discover the Hisui. Well, you know what I can do? I can pause it and I can show it like this. Discover the Hisui region of Pokemon Legends Arceus, which this is the flashback Pokemon game in the past. Which it is being called Pokemon Legends, so I guess that does probably explain to most people that it shouldn't probably be the first Pokemon game you play. And yeah, definitely looks different. There's a lot more open world emptiness in what's being depicted, like here, compared to the heavily suburban areas that you travel in most Pokemon games. And I wonder if that is the goal, first and foremost, is to just make a Pokemon game that lets them just have empty rooms, empty plains. Gamatsu says the Pokemon Cafe Mix is going to relaunch as Pokemon Cafe Remix this fall. I don't even know what this is. It's a free-to-start puzzle game. Don't recall ever even seeing it. I guess it's some kind of cooking game. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Dig into the details trailer. Details and screenshots are available. And these are little chibi characters. But I think Brilliant Diamond and Pearl are re-releases of and remasters of old Pokemon games that were on like the Nintendo DS. Yeah. Looking here, it does seem like they've kind of reskinned everything.
No interruptions.
What's funny about this, I would say though, is if they've reskinned the game, why did they reskin it to look like little chibi characters like this when the remake of like the first game, Hey You Pikachu, or not Hey You Pikachu, but the Pokemon Yellow reskin that came out for Switch. I don't know why you would reskin a later game in a completely different way when inevitably you're almost certainly going to have to reskin it again to look like the new 3D realistic graphics. Seems like they just made double the work for themselves. Let's see, Gamatsu also has the Pokemon Legends Arceus information here, if you want to check that stuff out. And then finally, Oddworld Soulstorm is coming to Xbox Series and Xbox One. Release date has not been announced yet. Also, I wanted to mention that Fortnite has a Wonder Woman Cup that is happening right now. So, this is kind of an interesting way to depict Wonder Woman, but doesn't look terrible. Generally, I don't talk about what's going on in Fortnite, but
You're a funny one.
that felt like something that might be worth mentioning. So, what that does now that we've done all the tabs is we're just kind of, I'm going to go through my Twitter feed and see if there's any new news that happened in the last 3 hours, once again. And if there isn't any major news to talk about, we'll call it a stream. Because, yeah, I feel too sleepy and don't really feel like I should try and do any flawless cleanup.
I know when I've lost.
Which is a shame because theoretically I could try that.
I'm telling you, I'm a great performer.
Let's see, yeah, scrolling down my Twitter feed. Apparently Biomutant has topped 1 million in sales.
I'll show you something nice.
Do this.
I'll show you something nice.
Evolve.
scatter like the blossom.
this.
Tasty little
Take
morsel.
this
So many souls.
in the turn.
I don't offer salvation, just gratitude.
Divinity by name is ignorance.
Let's see. Deep Silver Revolution is hiring a senior environmental artist, according to Gamma Sutra. Check that out if you're interested.
A flash of metal, a silent night.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna win on this one. G4 is tweeting out several videos, but
Like the moon.
G4 has not been specifically consistent as far as when it puts out content. It's doing maybe one video a week at most. Alright, so I guess off screen I would try to get 2 more victories here, 1 more victory here, but maybe I wouldn't do that at all. So that's going to be it for gameplay. And yeah, I'm still scrolling down my Twitter feed. I need to buy a new controller. That is another thing that has become fairly apparent when playing Binding of Isaac, is that my controller is fairly worn out. I'll probably try and wait until there's a sale, but getting the Xbox One controller on sale tends not to be cheap. But yeah, and honestly, if my controller only shows slight problems, slight playability problems with the Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and then I go and play some other game and it doesn't show anything because the dead zone issue is specific to Rebirth, then there really wasn't a reason to buy a controller, was there? If anything, I just need to figure out if there's some secret way to increase the dead zone in Rebirth particularly. And again, I'm just yawning. I'm gonna fall asleep. I knew I was gonna fall asleep. Like, that's not the surprising part. The problem was I'm gonna fall asleep. I was gonna fall asleep an hour and a half into a 3-hour live stream, when ideally I should have wanted to fall asleep an hour after the end of the live stream. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna have any real new things to talk about as far as video game news. I'm going down the Twitter feeds as fast as possible. Let's see, Cat Lateral Damage Remastered is coming out September 15th for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. A game called Nostalgic Train is coming out August 19th. We'll just talk about these things, though. You know, we'll just talk about these things on Friday, which there's a decent possibility that there isn't. There isn't going to be that much to talk about on Friday. Apparently, Biomutant has sold over 1 million copies and recouped all of its costs in the first week, despite being mixed reviewed. If I wasn't so sleepy, I would want to talk a little bit about the kind of the attitude and thought behind massive cleavage being shown and near nudity that I think at one time was full nudity in Cyberpunk 2077, and the idea that people just don't care about what their body looks like because they can replace and upgrade everything, or they've become so obsessed about their appearance that they want to show it off like crazy. Of course, trying to have that kind of deep intellectual insight or conversation is as deep and intellectual as a conversation like that could actually be. Doesn't really work when the game itself just sucks. It's like you can't find hidden depth if surface level something is uninteresting. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.